My name is Wayne Uptagrafft, and I was born and raised in Mitchell, South Dakota, home of the world's only corn palace. I was raised on a small farm south of Mitchell, where I milked cows and did farm work for until I got out of school. And then I got tired of milking the cows and told my dad, now that I'm 18 years old, I don't need him to sign for me. So I just joined the Army. And I had a lot of experience in the Army. Took basic training at Fort Riley, Kansas. And after that, I attended NCO school at Fort Riley, Kansas, and played a little baseball. And then I was sent to Fort Jackson, South Carolina in August of 1950. And I was assigned to a platoon sergeant down there, training recruits in the infantry. And that is when they mixed the colored and the white together. So that was quite a challenge coming from South Dakota, because there we treat everybody alike. And it was hard to adjust to doing that, because I wasn't supposed to be like that. But it wasn't going to change my personality. So I stayed there until I went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. My regimental commander recommended that I go to a school up there with the Green Beret. So I went ahead and spent a month up there at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That would have been in October of 1950, 50. And it was the roughest 30 days of training I ever had in my life. I wanted to quit a couple times, but I'm glad I did. I didn't realize that at the time what I was training for. And I was sent to Atlanta, Georgia, where I was given a physical and several different shots and interviewed and sent home for furlough. And then in end of December, I was sent to Fort Sacramento, California, where they put me on a ship and to Tokyo for 2 weeks on that ship. And then I got to Tokyo. I flew to Korea, South Korea, Seoul, and I was met there by some people from the 8240th Army Unit, which I know nothing about. And I was told then that I was going to be sending up to an island and working with guerrilla troops with special forces. Means I had some training at Fort Bragg, which I at the time did not know nothing about. So I stayed in Seoul, and I trained some guerrilla troops, which were made up of South Koreans, kids that their parents were killed by the North Koreans, and Chinese. So I trained them on guerrilla warfare, and not knowing that some of them were going to be under me when I got up to the island. So I trained about a dozen of them that I could trust, and that were good soldiers and would be good soldiers, and do what I could tell them and understand my language barrier, which I used a lot of hand signals and different things. It was hard to learn the Korean language that fast. Some of the words that I used, they understood very well. So I got up to the island, and that's when I found out who my company commander was. And then I had 4 other NCOs that were going to be radio men on the island. And I was in charge of these guerrilla troops. And knowingly, I didn't realize that I was going to be running operations at night past the DMZ with guerrilla troops, blowing up ammo dumps, railroad tracks, individuals. We'd take maybe 5 to 6 different guerrillas with me, because you get too many of them, they get disarrayed and you can't handle them. So we get in there, and our mission was 2 things: kill and destroy. It was simple as that, and that's what we did. It would depend how many I went on, who I took with me, how many I lost. A few, yes, which you're bound to. But I was the only American when I went on patrol with those Koreans. No other American went with me. I wore no American equipment, no watches, rings, insignias. I looked just like one of the guerrilla troops. And I, they camouflaged me as much as they possibly could. But it was a challenge. Was I scared? Absolutely. I was scared every time I went out. And every time I went out, it got a little tougher. Then in September of 28th of 1952, we were overcome by about 300 North Koreans, and we only had about 100 guerrilla troops. And that's when I got wounded. I got hit in the shrapnel in my leg and some in my face, and I nearly cut my left thumb out. And I got back to the island, and I got on the radio, and there was a British ship in the Yellow Sea. I couldn't get back to my headquarters, and we had a lot of heavy rainstorm that night, so they couldn't come and get me. So I stayed in this bunker the whole night, and I had a first aid kit with some morphine in it, and I gave myself a couple of shots of morphine to kill the pain, and they come and got me the next morning. The Navy did, the British Navy, and took me out to the ship, and I stayed there for 3 days and got treated, and then I was sent back to the island again. But it was an experience, a very scary experience. And I thank the British, I thank the people that I worked with on the island for help taking care of me, because it was cold and damp. We had a Korean woman there, a nurse, and she would lay by me to keep me comforted, to warm me up, and that's all. She was very nice, a very nice person, and I thanked her the day I left. I thanked her very much for what she did. But I was asked, would I come back? No. Once was enough. What did I think of the Korean people? I thought very highly of them. And the more I was around them, the more I appreciated them. And there on the island, we had 4 enlisted men and 4 officers, and each one of them had a different job. And the radio men, they were all they were drafted, and I was the only regular Army. So I had a lot of fun with those draftees, but they were good soldiers. And to this day, all of them died either from heart attacks or from cancer. So I'm the only survivor out of the enlisted men, and my company commander, Major Ripley, is still alive in Raleigh, North Carolina. In fact, I got to meet him 50 years later at Fort Bragg at our 50th anniversary. He come down and visit me, and we got together for a day and talked over old days. But he tried to get me to come to Vietnam with him, and I told him I was not interested in going to Vietnam, because I was married and had 4 daughters, and I was in the South Dakota National Guard at that time as the AST and First Sergeant of the National Guard unit, and also I was the instructor for the state of South Dakota for Officers Candidate School for 6 years. So I had all kind of excuses for not to go to Vietnam. That was not in my, I'm glad I didn't, because I got a lot of Vietnam veterans now that are my friends, and I know what they went through. I understand them now, and some of them still never recovered, and it's pretty sad. And I thank our government for that. In fact, I thank them for a lot of things. Especially our VA system, which has not been very good taking care of our veterans, especially the homeless. That's a sore spot with me. No veteran should ever have to be homeless in America. No way. If we had a government that did their job, they gave their life, fought for their country, they deserve better than that. So I better slow down.
Can you tell me more about, after you enlisted, what did your training look like, and how did you end up doing the specialized training for guerrilla warfare?
I learned that at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Uh, it was the same thing of the Green Beret. In fact, that's who I was with at the time, was the Green Beret. And not knowing, I didn't know what Special Forces was. It was either the Green Beret. And I found out when I got to Korea, Seoul, Korea, and at our headquarters there, that I was now Special Forces. And it sounded good. You know, you're 20 years old, you think you're a Rambo, but you're really not. It puts a different aspect on people, on what you see, the children, grandmothers and fathers, the way they were treated and what they were going through. Thank goodness we had a lot of Snicker candy bars that was given to us, and I'd always have my pockets full of Snicker candy bars, and these kids would come up to me and say, Sarge Snicker, Sarge Snicker. And I understood. I said, yes. I says, I do, but I need some information. Is there any enemy agents on this island that you know of that we don't know about? If there is, you're going to get a lot of Snickers and you're going to get rice. But we're going to take all the rice away from you now until we find out. And it's amazing how much rice and Snickers we give away. They told us where they were and where they were hiding, and we either went and captured them or fight it out with them. But Special Forces, you know, at that time really didn't mean a lot to me what it was. But somebody says to me now, "You was in Special Forces?" I says, "Yeah." "Oh man, that's a pretty tough outfit." I says, "I don't know." I says, if we're supposed to be tough, we're supposed to be good at what we do, and I think we were. But I just did my job. I had a job to do, and I did it.
So, for going into the Special Forces, was that something that you got to request, or is that something you were just selected for?
No, my regimental commander at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, a lot of the guys would go to the NCO club and drink beer. Well, I go down to the gym and work out because I wanted to put on a little more weight and a little more muscle. Well, my regimental commander, who was Colonel Cobb, was down there working out too, and he's a big husky guy. So he volunteered me to go to Fort Bragg and to take training with the Green Beret, not knowing that I was going to end up in Special Forces. And I didn't realize at the time how important it was to be in the Special Forces, because everybody just couldn't be in the Special Forces. I said, why me? A farm boy from South Dakota? You know? But I trained well, I worked hard, and did what I was told, and I was sort of a tough guy and Rambo, and one thing led to another, and I ended up being in Special Forces in Korea, and I was classified in 1952 as top secret, and I stayed that way until 1990. I couldn't tell my story. I couldn't say nothing to my wife, and it was tough, because when I came back home, I'd go in a cafe and I'd make sure that I had the wall behind me, so I knew there wasn't anybody behind me. And I would get out at night and walk, and I would have a pistol with me, and I was always looking back to see if somebody was following me. And I lived in Owatonna at that time, and the cops would come by and see me, so they picked me up, and we go have coffee at a cafe or something. But I just really did not feel like corresponding or talking to anybody. I can remember a good friend of mine that I bowled with. He come and sat by me in the cafe and started talking to me, and I was in one of my moods, and I said, "Get the hell away from me." I said, I don't want to talk to you. I said, "Just leave me alone." Not realizing at the time that I had PTSD. And it took several years before they finally figured it out that I was a little wacky in the head with PTSD, and I'd get flashbacks and bad memories, and sometimes I'd get in a fight too. And somebody challenged me, and that was the last thing I'd want to do. But I wouldn't step away either, because hell, I was in special forces. That was important, We're supposed to be tough, but we're all supposed to be kind and caring. And I worked on trying to do that. So, especially with my grandchildren, I tell them, hey, it's no big deal to go to war. If you don't have to, don't. I always thought it was nice when I was on the farm. My uncle, World War II, I wanted to go to war like he is. Well, I found out when I got to Korea, it wasn't that easy. It really wasn't that easy. And so I changed my attitude and thinking. And thank God I got out of there after 11 months. They wanted me to extend. And he says, I'll make you a second lieutenant. And then you can, when you get out of here after 6 months, I'll get you into Fort Benning, Georgia, to Officers Candidate School. I said, sir, I don't want to be a second lieutenant. I want to stay as a sergeant. And I said, our second lieutenant at that time will get when he gets killed. So I'm really not interested in it. So it was sort of a joke. Who in the hell wants to be a second lieutenant? And when I taught Officers Candidate School in Mitchell, South Dakota, I was teaching these guys how to be second lieutenants. They'd always say to me, just remember, I'm going to be an officer someday. I said, just remember, I'm the best friend you'll ever had in the military as a first sergeant. So I says, I'm not going to take any shit from you right now either. And it was all sort of in fun, but I was still serious about it. And in 1958, I was picked in South Dakota as one of the outstanding soldiers and got sent to Washington, D.C. for 3 days and carried the American flag down Pennsylvania Avenue. And my congressman from my hometown, Senator George McGovern, had a case of beer up in his office. So we sat there and drank beer that afternoon, too. So it's a small world out there sometimes. And here he ends up running for president, but he was a nice guy. He did a lot of things for me. I was a registered Republican, but that meant nothing to me because they made me sign up as a registered Republican. And I'm an individual who likes to vote for the person. I believe there's good people on both sides, and I still believe that today. What do I think that's happening now? I don't even want to talk about it. So
when did you depart for Korea?
Pardon?
When did you depart for Korea?
Depart for it?
Mm-hmm.
I got to Seoul, Korea, right after Christmas in December of '51. And I got to Tokyo, then I flew to Seoul, and that's when somebody picked me up in a Jeep and had my name on a board, and I said, that's me. And they took me into Seoul and into the headquarters there. Everything's moving so fast, And they said, we're going to give you your equipment now, your weapons, and what you need. And I said, well, where the hell am I going? He says, you're going up on an island called Kangwon-do. I said, where's that at? He says, up by the DMZ. I think, oh, God. That's close to the Chinese and North Koreans, which it was. All that was between us was a small river. And but that's once I got to the island, got adjusted, we had 800 guerrilla troops there, which we couldn't defend a North Korean army, but we could do something. And but after a while, I sort of enjoyed it because I got adjusted to the kids that I was training, and that went with me. And I always took good care of them, made sure they had food, their family got food, because the last thing I wanted to do was have one turn on me when I'm on over the DMZ. And I'd usually take maybe 5 or 6, maybe sometimes 2 or 3, depending on what the mission's going to be. But I never looked forward to it. Once I crossed that DMZ, it was different. Different. I just had to blink everything out and know where I'm supposed to go. And how did we know where we were supposed to go? We would send 3 agents in from our island to this location. And on another island, they would send 3 agents in, either before or after, to this island, and see if their information was the same. If not, it was called off, because I didn't want to walk into a blank wall. And it was a scary situation, especially at night. You're in somebody else's territory that you've never been in. You don't know if you got booby traps or just what you're going to have. But I made up my mind I'm going to do my job. And I got to remember, I'm going to get back there and get married too. So she wouldn't be too happy if I didn't get back there. But like I say, I have a lot of respect for the Korean people. In 2005, me and my wife went back to Seoul, Korea, and I got extended 3 days. I requested it, and went back up to the island I was on. And lo and behold, here's 12 of the guerrilla troops that I had when they were 15, 16 years old. Now they're 70, 71 years of age, in uniform. And the one said to me, he says, "I know you. You was a sergeant." I says, "Yeah." I said, "What are you?" He said, "I'm a lieutenant colonel now. So now I give the orders." And I said, "Just a minute. You think I'm still a sergeant? What are you?" I says, "I have a star on each shoulder." He said, "Oh, shit." He says, "You're a general." I says, "That's right." "You give the orders again," he said, which I wasn't, but I never told him anything different. But he was a special person to me, because sort of built up my adrenaline. That me and him, we loved to wrestle. And I'd get a hold of him and get his head in here and give him the old head. Oh, he'd get so mad at me. But he never could beat me. And I didn't want him to either, around the guerrilla troops. But like I say, to this day, I still respect him. In fact, my doctor today that I went to this morning was a Korean. And his family was over there in Korea yet. And we got to talking about different things. And he knew where Kangwon-do was. He'd been there. And just different things. And he says to me, "Do you like kimchi?" I said, "Oh my God. You know what kimchi is?" I says, "Well, yes and no." I says, I coached football at Stewartville for 7 years. I had a Korean boy, half 50-50, and his mother made me kimchi. And she made me eat it too. And thank God it wasn't strong. But I had heartburn for how long. But this is some of the things that I talk to these Korean people, and most of them here in Rochester are professional people. They're either IBM or at the clinic. You don't see them standing down here in front of City Hall looking for a handout. If there is, he's gone. The other Korean people will go after him. That's just the way they are. So like I say, I have a lot of respect for the Korean people. And I'll tell you, I found out when I was there in 2005, their special forces there are the best. They are the best. There's only one better than them, and that's us. And I tell them that. Yeah, we taught you. And the funny part about it, a lot of these Koreans are half American, half Korean, so they're bigger now than when I was there. And they're very well trained. They were the most feared troops in Vietnam, was the Korean Special Forces. So we did a lot of good things, I guess. And I'm glad Korea is the way it is. South Korea is the way it is today. Would I do it again? I probably would. I probably would. It's always easy to change your mind afterward. But to be honest, yeah, I'd go back again. I do the same thing. Because I'm Rambo. You know? Not no more.
So are there any stories that you remember from your time there?
When I got ready to leave, they made me a brass plaque with my name on it. Sergeant Wayne R. Uptagrafft, infantry. Then on the back of it, I had put a village on the back of it, and I got that at home and when I'm watching TV, I can look at that thing, and I see it, and I have other trinkets that they had given me, a pipe from an old Papa's son that gave me, and a lot of different glasses, cookware and stuff that they give my wife when we was there. I got one corner cupboard all full of that stuff. And I look at that stuff and it reminds me of why we were there. At first I didn't figure what the hell what are we doing there? But I found out afterwards why we were there. And I think the most toughest part was seeing the children that their parents were killed. They're in alleys wherever. And we have a lady here in Rochester, Jennifer. She was 3 years old when an American soldier found her in an alley, and that was in 1963. And she's very intelligent. I've had her come to our meeting and talk and at different things, and she calls me her dad. And I said, well, that's not possible. Because I says, you were born in 63, and I left in 53. So she said, no, you're still my dad, she says. And so I stop in. She's got a business here, cosmetic, and does different things, takes works on your skin and that. So I stop in and I see her every once in a while. And, hi, Dad, you know. And I said, well, you're my fifth daughter now. Fifth? Yeah. I said, well, I got 4 other ones. He said, oh, that's right. You know, no boys. And thank God I don't have to send them to war. But, no, I have to say, I think the military been good for me. There's things I didn't like about it. There's things I don't like about the VA. The system needs a lot of work. And they got to take care of our veterans. The homeless, that is so sad to see them standing on the corner looking for a handout with a sign saying, I am a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran, or whatever it may be. They shouldn't be there. Do I give them money? No, because if I give one, I feel I got to give them all to them. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take you to a cafe and buy you a meal. But I won't give you any money. You can eat any damn thing on the menu. Steak, lobster, I don't care. But I'll pay for your meal, but no money. I will not give you any money. And I have a few times. And I feel good about myself for doing it, because I say to myself, that could be me. Would somebody help me? And there's a lot of our Korean veterans right now that they help other veterans. I say our Korean War Veterans Club is a bunch of excellent guys, really nice. I have more fun with them now than anything, being I'm no longer a commander. But when I get up to talk, first thing they do is boo me. And then when you got 50 guys booing, you can imagine what it sounds like. And then when I'm done, I get the same send-off. I get booed again. But it's all in fun. And I say to myself, well, maybe they do like me. Why are they doing it? I asked them this morning, or this noon, why do you guys booing me? We like you. I says, okay, I was hoping so. So, you know, it's the guy that you interviewed before, Dwayne Beck, he was my first adjutant. And a nice guy. Nice guy, except he's a Marine. And I don't know, do you know Tim Waltz, the congressman here? Well, I worked with him at Veterans Organization. I introduced him, and when I introduced, he started to talk. I say, I want you veterans to know that I really wanted to be a Marine. And somebody will say, well, what happened? I said, I had too high of an IQ. And now I find out how many Marines I got out. But I say, it's all in fun, all in fun. But it gives me a chance to relax and continue on what I want to say. Start the conversation out. And it helped Congressman Waltz, too. So I've helped him for 6 elections. But I'm getting up there in the age of 83 that I'm going to slow down and smell the roses.
So what was the date that you departed from Korea?
I departed there on the 3rd of January of 1953. I spent 15 days out in that beautiful ocean, seasick, and then I got to Camp Carson, Colorado. When I got to, well, first of all, I got to Sacramento, and they put us on a train, and I got to Camp Carson, Colorado. And there they're supposed to discharge me right away. Sergeant says, no, he says, we'll give you 30 days, then you come back. Well, not knowing that the form that he gave me wasn't the correct papers. So I go home, I get married, I come back. I walk into personnel, and he says, who are you? I says, I'm Sergeant Uptagrafft. Yeah, where the hell you been? And I said, why? Well, you've been AWOL for 30 days. I said, like hell I have. I said, here's my pay. He says, them are just papers to get the orders cut. Who the hell gave you that? I says, you did. You're the sergeant. And this captain come over and he said, what's going on here? I told him, he says, I want this sergeant discharged and out of here in 2 days. And they did. You never know. You never know. I was on my honeymoon then. I married the girl that I was a 9th grader and she was a 7th grader. We was in a theater, me and my brother, on a Saturday afternoon. These 2 girls come and sat in front of us, and I had bought some lemon drops. So being a gentleman, I asked them if they'd like to have a lemon drop. So they took a lemon drop, and after the movie I said to her, I says, where are you going now? Well, we're going to walk up to the recreation hall center and stop in there. I said, well, can I walk with you? Well, yeah. So I was with her. So off and on for 7 years I would see her. But before I went to Korea, I got engaged to her. And I stayed with her for off and on for 7 years. She never went with another guy all that time. One guy he liked her, but I had a little conversation with him, and he no longer would ask her for a date. I guess I must have scared him. But anyway, I got 4 daughters. I got 9 grandchildren, 11 great-grandchildren, and they're all doing great. So, like I say, in a way, the military's been good to me. But I had sent 3 agents into North Korea to a certain location to get some information for me. And likewise, they were sending 3 from another island either before or after us. And when they came back through the DMZ, there was a guard there, called himself a captain, and they'd been drinking and raising hell, and they cut the throat on 2 of my agents, and the other one they knifed, but he got back to me on the island, but he died in my arms when I was talking to him and trying to help him, and he told me what had happened. And he's 15 years old. And so I said to the major, I says, I'm taking my interpreter and 1 good gorilla. I said, I'm going back up there. And what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to even the score. I can't let this go. So I worked my way on up, and at the next night, And he was in there still drinking, raising hell. And right there and then, I told my interpreter, tell him why I'm here. And my interpreter says, you come here to cut your throat. And I did. And I never forgot it. You know, at the time, maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. But I see what he did to those 15-year-old kids, which he wasn't supposed to. He's supposed to let them through, both ways. But he had a different attitude. And the other two that were with him, the girl that I came with me, he cut both of their throats. So I never forgot it. If I'm watching a movie on TV or something, somebody gets their throat cut, bang, I think of that. It's not something to think about, but it's something hard to forget too. I had a reason for doing it. 3 young kids, 15, 16 years old, just doing their job. So I did my job. Not liking it. The major said to me, Sergeant Uptagrafft, I think I know what you're going to do. He said, just be careful you don't get your throat cut up there. I said, I'll be careful. So I worked my way up there, and he was there, thank God. I was praying he was there, him and the other two. And we returned the favor. Did it send a message? I don't know, because they had a reward out for me as the American bringing guerrilla troops into North Korea. And so in the month of November, December, we no longer went on patrols into North Korea, because that was one of the reasons. But then it was getting cold too, and I didn't know, for money. And my guerrilla troops, were they faithful or not? I don't know. They got family. Would they turn me in for that? I didn't want to take a chance on it, because I'm getting close to going home. And so we had a sail junk boat with an inboard motor on it. And I would get on that with a 50 caliber machine gun, and every other round was a tracer. And I would take it out in the Yellow Sea, which we were right next to, and run down enemy sail junks that were trying to sneak through with drugs on it, and or agents. Give them a chance to surrender. If not, we blow them out of the water. They say war is hell. It is. It is very hell. I was picked here in 2 years ago. I was picked to Farmington High School up here. It was Patriotic Day. I was picked out of 5 different Korean soldiers in the United States, interviewed to talk up there. So I went up there and was interviewed, and before I left, they said, well, we're picking you. And so I went up there on a certain date, and we had a pork chop meal that day. About 800 parents, and about 400 children. And I talked to about 1,200 people in the auditorium. And it's the first time in my life that I had a chance to they said, I'll give you 8 minutes. I said, I can't even say my name in 8 minutes. I said, I got to take longer than that. But he said, you watch, I'll give you a high sign. He never gave me a high sign. I talked 18 minutes, and I let it all hang out. A little boy come up to me afterwards, and he said to me, when you said you wasted them, did you mean you killed them? I said, yes. Here's this 3rd and 4th grader, and the superintendent said to me, do not use those words when you're talking. And I seen the superintendent after. I said, hell, they're smarter than I am. I says, you can't run nothing past these kids. I says, you tell us to be honest. I says, I want to be honest. So I says, if I talk again to a bunch of kids, I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to use the word, because they know. I mean, they watch movies, they watch TV, but I enjoyed going up there and talking to all those kids because they had so many questions to ask me, and they had a nice ceremony, and on the big screen, they showed when I was commander of the Korean War Veterans Club, of the trailer that I'd gotten, and the troops on it, and parades we participated in. So there's something good comes out of everything. And would I do it over again? Hell yes, I would.
Do you have like a message or any piece of wisdom that you could pass on to younger generations?
I've had kids come up to me and say, what branch of the service would you join if you had to do it over? I said, that's a tough question, son. I said, depends what you want to do. You want to be a Rambo? I says, Army Special Forces. But I don't recommend it. I says, something else, the Air Force. If I was going to do it over again, I'd join the Air Force and learn a trade. I said, that's the best branch of the service there is to learn a trade. But when you're young like I was, you don't think of that. You think, well, my uncle was a World War II veteran with the first cab. I want to be like him. I said, the best thing I can tell you, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Just be yourself. But when you're called on to fight for your country, show up. Don't run to Canada. Because I'll tell you, I got no use for those people that run. You know, because somebody's got to take their place. I got no use for draft dodgers. Somebody's got to take their place. Maybe they lost their life. You know, you're living in the greatest country in the world. You know, sure, there's things you don't like to do. I wouldn't have been too happy if I got drafted, probably. But I went to the draft board and said, I'm going regular Army. And what was the reason they said? I said, I'm tired of milking those damn cows. And I was. My dad, before I turned 18, he said, I'm not signing no papers for you. I said, it's okay. I said, when I turned 18, I don't need you to sign for me. And when I turned 18, which was January 21st, and March 16th, I was on my way to Fort Riley, Kansas. We still live in the greatest country in the world. We got the greatest military in the world. And if it's important to defend our country, I recommend it, yes. But to go do somebody else's fighting, not no more. I says, I was glad I went to Korea. At first I wasn't. But after I went to Korea after the war and seeing what we accomplished, it was worth it. 33,000 lives? I don't think so. But we still got the job done. And now they call it a police action. It's not a war. And I've been trying to get Washington to call it a war. Get away from the police action. That's terrible. We don't think so. There was no police action when I was there. It was a damn war. So that's all I got to say.